My name is Green. I'm a guide from Irigoyen River, which is located in between Ushuaia and Rio Grande in Tierra Del Fuego, down south, 3 hours and a half on a dirt road. This is my 4th season in this river. 2 seasons now and 2 seasons before with another company. But before I used to guide in Rio Grande. I started guiding in Cautapen Lodge, Villa Maria Lodge, Tunken, and Maria Betty. But I've chosen this river because for me probably it's one of the best rivers for sea trout in the world, because it's very technique fishing, a small river, and you have plenty logs. This river is quite small, so what happens is a big fish, when they take the fly, they get under the logs and the fight is unbelievable. It only lasts maybe 20-25 seconds and you take it out. More than 20 seconds, sometimes you even cut your leader, that we use 20 pounds and 25 pound tippet, you bend the hook, or sometimes you break your line. It's very, what I call it in Spanish, picante. Picante means that really heavy. In Rio Grande you can catch numbers, of course, you catch plenty fish, but here you will find in one of those logs 8 kilo fish, 17-18 pounder, that probably is going to be the fish of your life. First time I came here, I saw that. I got in love with this river, and it's like my dream river. And from there on, I try to come every year, because this river, you don't get it in any place in the world, only here, in Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. Because this river is so small, sometimes the water drops a lot, the level water is very low, and the fishing can be a bit tougher. The fish, they are there, but when you don't have wind and a sunny day, it gets really tough. Most of it, the fish, they get really under the logs, and it's very difficult to take them out. So we have another option that is in the ocean. It's where the river junction the ocean, and we have a type of fish that is called robalo that comes into the river, and we can catch them in, sometimes you can catch 30-40 fish. The biggest one we caught, it was 15 pounds, so they fight really well, and it's very fun fishing. Usually we do that before going to the river. We go to the ocean, we fish for robalo, we have some fun there, and then we go to the river on the evening session to get the sea trout. No, that it's what we came to fish here. But robalo, they work.
Just going to talk through some tackle or recommended tackle here for the Rio Irigoyen to make sure that if you're planning your trip of a lifetime to this river, the tackle requirements are quite specific. So this is just to make sure you bring exactly what you need for your trip to get most out of your experience and most out of the river. Starting with rods, you really don't need any double handers on this river, be it a spey, full double hander, 13-footer, or all the switch rods. Neither have a place on the Rio Irigoyen. What you really want is a single hander. Anything from 9.5 foot, 10 foot, around there is absolutely perfect. Line rating number 7 or number 8. Don't go lighter, and you really don't need to go any heavier as well. Something around a 10 foot for a number 7 is absolutely perfect. For travelling purposes, this is a 4-piece, so if you are travelling down, that usually fits inside your case, which makes life a lot easier as well. So if you can get one 4-piece, all the better for it, but it doesn't really matter beyond that. The action needs to be not too fast and not too slow. So something like a medium fast action is perfect. You don't want it to be too fast, because you'll just end up, if you hook into some fresh sea trout, which I hope you will rip a lot of hook holes if you use a very fast action rod. So actually you want to use something around the medium to medium fast action rod. Too slow, and again you tend to lose a lot of the fighting power in the bottom end of the rod. So again, I wouldn't really recommend that. So if you can get something around the medium to medium fast action, that's perfect. A lot of the casting can just be little flicks too, and the loading action of those medium to medium fast actions again are perfect for that, rather than being too fast. Reel, you need a decent drag system. It doesn't have to be that heavy in the drag department, but actually it needs to be very smooth. That's the key feature for sure, because the fish can do a lot of jumps, and they can just the turn and speed of the sea trout. You just need to handle that with a very smooth drag system, otherwise you'll end up snapping the nylon. It doesn't have to be anything more than that really, but it does have to be really smooth. Lines, you want something that's loading over a very short distance, so something that loads really quickly over a very short distance. And I would say for that, I'm just finishing my week here on the Irigoyen, I've been using the Airflow bomber line. That's been perfect. It's designed for the east coast of Canada, fishing with bombers, hence the bomber line, for the Atlantic salmon. But that's been a perfect line down here, just loading under short distances. That's a great line. Another one would be the Airflow 40 plus, but the normal version, not the extreme version, so the shorter head version, or even the Airflow sniper line. All of those lines would be absolutely perfect for the Irigoyen. Again, you're looking for things that load quickly under short distances. The casts on the Irigoyen are rarely that long, but you need to be able to sometimes turn over heavy tungsten nymphs or big leeches under short distances. So those short bellied lines load up very quickly and are perfect for that job. If not, try to overload your rod by 1 line rating. So if your rod is rated for a number 7, put a number 8 through it. That can usually do the same or achieve the same thing. You only really need to carry a floating line, so you don't need to bring lots of reels, just 1 floating line is perfect. And what you do then, you bring lots of different tips, okay? So anything from your intermediates all the way down to, I've got some pretty heavy stuff in there, probably down to a T14, but everything from your intermediate all the way down. So just carry a range of tips along with your floating line, and then you're really well covered for the Irigoyen. Most of the time you'll actually just be using the intermediate tip, but there are some pools, and if the water gets cold or whatever, you will need to get a lot deeper. So then the T14 or the Type 7 or whatever comes into play. Just make sure that when you are buying, for example, the poly leaders, make sure you go for these are the salmon extra strong, which have a 40-pound core. But even the sea trout steelhead or the standard salmon version, which are rated for a 24-pound core, they're fine too. But make sure you don't go for the trout versions. Just have a good read of the packaging, because a lot of them are rated for 12 pounds, which has no place on the Irigoyen, because on the nylon front, you really don't fish under 15 pounds, and actually it's quite rare to fish 15 pounds. Most of the time you're fishing 20 pounds. 20 pounds is your go-to strength for your day-to-day fishing on the Irigoyen. If you're fishing in the evening at sunset with the leeches and stuff, I actually step up to 25, because the fish just don't care. So if the fish don't care, and a lot of the time on the Irigoyen you need to battle the fish away from the obstructions, the log jams or whatever in the river, that extra security of the 25 pound is, it's nice to have, should we say that. So yeah, anything from 15 to 25. So in the sea pools, for example, when you know there's no obstructions and stuff, when you're fishing for the robalo or even the sea trout in the sea pools, the 15 can be perfect. But for the rest of the stuff, yeah, 20, 25, perfect. Flies, they're quite specific on the Irigoyen. You need tungsten can be key. Okay, so that's just a selection of nymphs I have here on the Irigoyen, but I don't think any of them have just a standard brass or copper bead. They are all tungsten, because quite simply the pots on the Irigoyen where the fish are resting may be really small, but actually quite deep. So actually you need to get it down to the fish very quickly in order to have any chance of actually catching that fish, especially in the daytime, especially on maybe a brighter day. They really won't move very far for the fly, so you need to get it down into their zone essentially, and the tungsten achieves that. So make sure they're tied on very strong hooks. In the UK, or for the UK market, I tend to tie them on carp hooks. Carp hooks tend to be really strong. They tend to have a nice gape on them, and then just tungsten. So make sure they're tungsten. And tungsten nymphs, they vary from a 4mm bead. 4mm is probably the smallest I'll be using down here, through to a 5.5, and sometimes there'll be a double tungsten, which will be a 5.5 backed up with a 4mm behind it for some of the really heavy stuff, or tungsten dumbbell eyes. So tungsten is really important. You need to bring some like woolly buggers. Also here I have some olive patterns. The olive patterns tend to be for the robalo in the sea pool. So they tend to feed on a very dark olive weed. They are opportunistic, so they will feed on perhaps little crustaceans or whatever, but a lot of the time they're actually feeding on a very dark olive weed. So again, you need a bead head on there, preferably a tungsten bead head, but a dark olive pattern tends to do the trick on the robalo. But then there's some heavy dumbbell eye stuff up here again for the river, for some of the really heavy stuff where you can almost just jig the fly out of the pots. And also, some black woolly buggers, which can work really well on the river too. Beyond that, you really shouldn't be without some leech patterns. So through from really big stuff through to perhaps not so big, black, and then the kind of greeny colours too, and they can work really well. The greeny patterns can work really well in cold water, for example. If it's been a cold night, they can work really well. But when you're fishing in the evening, yeah, you really will be concentrating on your black patterns, so your black leeches. They're not so heavy. There's a big rabbit strip across the top, but beyond that there's not so much weight, so you can actually fish them perhaps on a type 3 tip or something, for example, just to get it down a little bit, or there's some with bead chain eyes too. So don't come to the river without some leeches. The only other real pattern that I would highly recommend for the Irigoyen is the sunray shadow, which it's just a devastating pattern. So I tend to fish them from some really monstrous sunray shadows. They're probably around 8 inches long, and I vary them down to that's probably like 4 or 5 inches, and even down to some much smaller stuff down into 2 or 3 inches. So make sure you carry a good selection of sunray shadows. All the hooks on here on the Irigoyen would be single hooks. You can use barbed hooks, but they would be single hooks, and you tend to trail them behind, especially on the long wings. You just tend to trail them behind them there. So yeah, no need to debarb the hooks, but do just bring single hooks for the Irigoyen. On the clothing front, make sure you bring lots of layers. Layers is the key thing on the river. In terms of if the wind picks up, you are protected on the Irigoyen. That's one of the key things about the Irigoyen. You do have protection from the wind, but it can still get cold. And the evenings it can get cold, the river can be cold, so base layers are really important. So just bring a thermal layer. you don't need to bring neoprene waders. You know, there's a bit of walking and stuff involved on the river, so you need to be pretty mobile. So I'd stick with your breathable waders and a good comfortable boot. But beyond that, then lots of thermal layers just to keep you warm. It's easier to take stuff off. If you've got it, you can always take it off, but if you haven't got it, you can't put it on. You've got, so this is like, for example, what I'm just wearing here now. That's a good base layer just to begin with, and then you can put a jacket and stuff over. Make sure you bring a buff, just to cut out some of the wind, or just to keep your neck and stuff warm. The buff is key. Some gloves, some mitten type gloves. Really key again, just to cut off any cold wind, because your hands are getting wet all the time. So just to alleviate that, alleviate the cold wind hitting your cold hands and making you even colder. The gloves are key. Then a jacket, just a thermal, be it a down-filled jacket or whatever your preference, but that is really key. If it's not raining or there's no signs of any rain, you can always carry the rain jacket obviously in your backpack, but a lot of the time you'll get away with just wearing a base layer like this and this over it. For most of the time that would be perfect. It's really comfortable to fish in, but that will cover you, keep you nice and warm. And then just, as I was saying earlier, just bring then in your backpack, just carry a wading jacket. That can cut through a bit more of the wind, but keep you a bit warmer. But obviously if it rains, it's always key to carry a good jacket. And then, so you're traveling around, if you're in the truck, or if you're with the Aardvark, you are still traveling around, you're wading across the river, blah blah blah. You want to take all of your fly boxes, you want to take your camera, you want to take the spare jacket, your gloves, whatever you're taking with you. I would really recommend taking just a backpack, a roll top waterproof backpack. Several on the market obviously, but something like that is really key. When you're not fishing with it, the guides will happily carry it for you. So it's not something you have to fish with on your back all the time, but I would really recommend bringing that just to store everything. It's not like on the Rio Grande, for example, where you're just driving from pool to pool, or the majority of the time you're driving from pool to pool. Here there is a bit more walking involved, and again, mobility with everything that you need to carry, that is really key. So I really recommend bringing that along with all of the other tackle and clothing recommendations that I've just gone through.
If you want to bring your own flies, bring them. Make sure that your hooks are very strong. Steelhead flies, steelhead hooks, they work really good. If not, we have flies at the lodge that's from a local guide. We have woolly buggers with legs that they work at the ocean for robalos. And then, for example, these kind of nymphs, they work during the day. We try to use small flies, because sometimes it's so low and sunny that you have to go very small and technique. And then at night we use, well, at night no, when the sun is going down, we use these kind of leeches, big flies they like, because they see the silhouette and they get really aggressive